Greetings, all Pokemon Canon podcast listeners. It's me, SirSerrato. Now, this episode is going to debut and broadcast for the first time on Halloween 2022. I have a story to share with you guys. It's something that not many people know other than my closest friends and my family. So, I had a pretty terrifying experience when I was very young. And when I say young, I mean elementary, fourth grade. I was a child. My grandmother used to babysit me at the time. And so many times my mother would drop me off there. My grandmother would watch me all day, and I would stay there until my mom got home. She was working long hours. She was in retail, so her schedule was very uncertain at times. So there was this one incident where I was at my grandmother's, of course. Now, my grandmother, she had one of those bathrooms that was kind of like a hallway, is the best way to describe it. Picture a small hallway. On the left of the hallway, there's a sink, there's like a divider wall, there's the toilet, and then there's the bathtub. So it almost felt like a walk-in closet that was like long way. So I went into the bathroom one day. My mother had dropped me off. My grandmother had to go to the grocery store. And I just said, I'll just stay here. The grocery store was not that far. I went to go take a shower. Now, mind you, I was a child. So I was still in that phase where you take a shower with the door open because you're afraid. I was just afraid of stuff. So I was taking a shower and I had the door open. I had the curtain closed, but I could look out. And directly in front of the bathroom door was the door to my grandmother's room. And I was showering, just wanting to hurry up so I can go out so that I could do whatever till my mom got there. I felt like I wasn't alone that day. Um, my grandmother, we found out later on that she was always involved with like witchcraft and stuff, which I don't condone, but it, it was always believed that she wasn't doing it the safe or the smart way. It was more like just contacting spirits. As I looked directly in front of me to the door leading out of the bathroom, right across that door was the door to my grandmother's room. All I could see was the foot of the bed. And I could hear the sounds of the bed spring going. I could also see the comforter moving, as in something or someone was jumping on the bed. The sound was so impactful. I could see the curtains and the mirror like shaking. Again, I was home alone. Nobody was there. And I could hear this. I could see this. Something was in there. And it was jumping on this bed. I remember from behind, I could see this shadow on the wall. And the best way I can describe the type of shadow that I saw is Sonic the Hedgehog. How like the back has the spikes going down. Whatever it was that was jumping on the bed had like this spiky back. I was mortified. I was just so terrified. Tears were running down my face and I was shaking. I was screaming. I had to get out of there. Now here's the terrifying part. The bathroom, as I said earlier, it was sort of a hallway. I was at the end where the bathtub was. In order for me to get to safety, I had to first run towards whatever it is that I was seeing in order to safely make a left or a right to get out of there. So, with all my might, I remember as I was screaming, I was crying, I was shaking. I grabbed a towel, I ran towards it, and then dashed to the right to the living room. And I dashed to the outside of the house and just waited for my grandmother to get there. Ever since that day, I was beyond terrified to go to my grandmother's house. And even years before my grandmother passed away, I still would never go there by myself or even stay anywhere in that house alone. That was the most terrifying experience that I've ever experienced in my life. Now, why am I sharing this for the Pokemon Canon episode? Because we asked our friends and family, the ones that were willing to share a real life story. And throughout this episode, as it is the Halloween special, you're going to hear some real life testimonies of real life things that have happened. So, happy Halloween. Greetings to all Pokemon manga fans. Welcome to the Pokemon Canon podcast, where we discuss and analyze the Pokemon Manga Series, which chronicles the adventures of Trainer Red as he journeys across the region of Kanto to become a stronger trainer. On his journey, Red catches Pokemon, collects gym badges, makes allies and enemies. Join us as we take a closer look at the overlooked origin story of Trainer Red and his Pokemon adventure. I am your host, SirSerrato.
And I'm Daramu.
And unfortunately, the third member of our trio is actually not available tonight for all of our podcast listeners. She's not available because she got summoned by the spirits. So she's in a different realm tonight for Halloween. So she's unavailable, but don't worry. She will make appearances throughout the episode. Now, this is our very special episode, and there's a reason for that. Daramu, tell our listeners why this is a special episode.
Because it's the first appearance of Ghastly.
Correct. Yes. That is correct. But there's another reason. This is a fan favorite. And what's the reason for that?
Oh, the reason why this is a fan favorite?
Yeah.
I figure we'd talk about this later because I'm pretty sure this is that episode.
Well, the answer I was looking for is that this is the Lavender Town.
Okay, the Lavender Town. Okay.
And as we know that, with any Pokemon hardcore fan, Lavender Town is a huge part of the fan base. People just love Lavender Town. And it's a lot with the actual lore, it's with the creepy music, it's with the whole fan theory with the rival and his Pokemon and a battle that took place on SSN. So there's a lot in this particular location in the games that people really, really love. So before we start with the actual episode, we would like to just introduce, we have two special guests in our episodes. So for this one, the first guest that we have is actually, he's sort of an extended member of the Pokemon Canon family. This is our friend of the podcast, Bobby. Now, Bobby, tell the listeners exactly what connection you have with the podcast. What exactly do you contribute to our show?
Well, other than that, just I'm generally kind of a nerd of all things and enjoy helping and supporting other nerd-based endeavors. I've been helping out with some of the artwork behind the scenes, so whether that's just kind of the backgrounds or just kind of helping with like t-shirt design or just putting a creative eye on those parts.
Exactly. So this is the guy that actually made our podcast cover art. So because for a while we didn't have a cover art, and especially with the Apple Podcast, we couldn't get it approved. But this is the guy that initially created the design based on what I told him that I wanted. He's also the one who's currently working on our Patreon cover art, as well as we're planning on going to Comic-Con. So if we end up going to Comic-Con, he's currently the guy who is designing and coming up with the concept for our t-shirts to wear at the convention. And then our other special guest, this is a girl that I went to high school with, and she is someone who is very in touch, and she kind of has like a connection with the supernatural, which is why I invited her for the show. She actually had an experience when she was younger, but we won't get into that here. If you want to just say hi to our listeners.
Hi guys, my name is Annie, and just like the presenter said, I know him for quite a while, and I'm into Pokemon. Adulting became my number one priority, unfortunately, but I do like Pokemon, especially because I grew up watching it in Spanish, so it has sentimental value to me.
Yeah, so you grew up in Mexico, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so you grew up watching it in Spanish. Is it called Pokemon there, or do they have like a different pronunciation for it?
Yeah, it's still Pokemon.
Still Pokemon? Yeah, there was this funny night that we went out. This was when Pokemon Go first launched. I remember that you and I had plans to go to the Woodlands here in Houston to go play Pokemon Go. And I just said, hang on, do you want me to get my Pokedex? And you said, no, it's okay. I have you. I'll be fine. So, like, I think in many ways, I am more reliable than a Pokedex. Maybe not as much as Daramu. Daramu is like in deep knowledge of the Pokemon, like leveling system and attacks. Me, I just know like a lot of random facts about Pokemon in general. So okay. So you guys are our guests for this very special Lavender Town episode. So we're going to go ahead and begin.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for being with us today. So we're going to start off with the TV guide synopsis. So for this one, I have, after a long absence, Green's whereabouts are revealed to Red, who risks his life to save the rival from a haunted ghost tower.
I always picture like that, like Law and Order, like that, dun dun, like
yeah, basically,
right
yeah, exactly.
It's very to the point, and it doesn't give away like the entire second half. So,
yeah. So okay. So now we're moving on to the Pokemon Are the Champions recap. So in our last episode, I had two suggestions, and they were both the exact same suggestion. Both Daramu and Fleur suggested that I do the recap as Snorlax. Yeah, so this is actually the very first time that we do a recap that's through a Pokemon. Because up until now, every recap that we've done is like a main character. So this is the first Pokemon one. So this is me going to do the recap for the last episode as Snorlax, okay? Here we go. It's time for Pokemon Pocket Monsters. Pokemon Are the Champions recap.
Red decided to take part in a bike race in the hopes to win prize money. Little did Red know, however, the racetrack was overloaded with obstacles and dangerous pathways. Lucky for Red, he was able to solve one puzzle after another, even if it meant him getting stung relentlessly all over by angry Beedrill, who were defending their honey. Honey. As Red and his team made their way to the end of the race, they were stopped by a roadblock, which is where I was sleeping after a long morning of eating. Red sent out his Poliwhirl to move me, but he was unable to do so. In the end, Red cleverly slathered honey on Bulbasaur to get my attention. With me right behind Red and his team, Red was able to make it to the finish line in first place. Now to unwind from my nap with some afternoon eating.
Hey guys, I have to interrupt the show for a moment to share one of our testimonies. This is Erica's story. The Midnight Cry. My ex-husband and I were arguing one night at midnight. He was really upset over my work scheduling, and the argument got so heated, I decided to head to my friend's house to cool down. As I was making my way down the hallway leading to the front door, I couldn't shake off this eerie feeling that I was not alone. From the moment I turned around, I felt a terrifying cold chill down my spine when I saw this strange silhouette in the corner of the room. Now, I could have dismissed this as my mind simply playing a trick on me out of fear. However, I could not deny the haunting sound of what I could only compare to a pig at a butcher farm being slaughtered and squealing in pure agony. I knew I was in danger. I leaned back onto the wall, trying to control myself, when the light bulb above me shattered and what sounded like two cars colliding with one another, completely shaking my soul. I was so horrified, I ran back into the bedroom with my husband at the time, in tears and crying so hard I couldn't even get a sentence out. I come from a very religious background, and so the first thing I did was pray with my husband in the hopes that whatever that was would leave us alone. Now back to the show. Up north, in Lavender Town, Red, Poliwrath, Bulbasaur, and Pikachu were making their way through the storm as they were entering Lavender Town. Lavender Town, a dark and mysterious town with a landmark that is very hard to miss, a large tower. As Red and his Pokemon were entering this area, Red noticed that around him, all of the people seemed to be very distrusting towards him and towards anyone else. It was strange to Red how these people seemed so standoffish simply by Red's presence. As everyone looked around, you could tell that there was something that was on their mind. Why so distrusting? Why so afraid? Why are all these people so paranoid? Behind Red, a man approached him. It was Mr. Fuji, who had come to pay his respects to his beloved Pokemon, a Doduo. He came over to the cross over Doduo's grave. He placed 2 plants in front of it to pay his respects. Realizing the situation, Fred decided to bend over and pay his respects for the Pokemon that was no longer of this world. Mr. Fuji was grateful to Red and asked him to join him at his house for a drink. At Mr. Fuji's house, Red was getting settled down as Mr. Fuji was pouring over a hot cup of tea so that the two could sit and talk for a bit. As Mr. Fuji looked out his window, he stared blankly at the tall tower that was nearly impossible to miss in the presence of Lavender Town. Mr. Fuji told Red that that is a resting place for Pokemon, a Pokemon cemetery. But if that's the case, Red wondered, then why did Mr. Fuji bury his beloved Doduo outside? Why not inside the resting place for Pokemon? The Pokemon Tower of Lavender Town. And that is when Mr. Fuji revealed the reason. Because they appeared. They? Wondered Red. The ghosts, explained Mr. Fuji. You see, Red, Lavender Town is widely known for a reason. It is believed that spirits and ghosts inhabit this tower. It is believed that there are some evil forces within this area, and that is the reason that so many people within this town are afraid. You see, it's not that they mistrust people or that they're afraid or paranoid of each other. They've seen things. They've felt things. They've heard things. You see, everyone's afraid because they're here and they're real. Red, however, did not seem to understand the severity of the situation, as he mockingly laughed at Mr. Fuji's explanation. But then he did remember that everyone he encountered did seem a little too terrified. That is when Mr. Fuji pulled out the picture of his beloved Pokemon, his Doduo. Mr. Fuji expressed sadness in not being able to properly give Doduo a proper resting place out of fear of the spirits in this world. Red holds up the picture and realizes that Mr. Fuji must have really cared for this Pokemon. Red alone has his Pokemon who he really cares about. Just the thought of not giving your loved one a proper resting place was enough to make Red feel pretty sad. And it humbled him a bit. I guess Red decided that he wanted to help out. As he was examining the pictures, however, Red saw a familiar face. It was his rival, Trainer Green. Mr. Fuji, shocked that Red knows this gentleman, asked, "Do you know this lad?" Red reveals that both of them, Green and himself, are on a journey to fill the Pokedex. But it had been some time since he'd seen him. That's when Mr. Fuji revealed the truth. You see, not too long ago, Green entered Lavender Town. And Green decided to head up to the Lavender Town Pokemon Cemetery Tower to see what was happening, to see what was causing all of this commotion, all of this fear. But you see, that was 2 weeks ago. And no one had seen or heard from Green since. Mr. Fuji feared something terrible must have happened to him. But everyone in this town is too afraid to check, too afraid to investigate. There are just some things that you just don't mess with. And unworldly spirits are one of them. Later that day, as Red was walking outside in the pouring rain, he starts thinking about his rival, Green. Green's been missing for some time. This would explain his absence and why no one has seen him. Green has been gone. Green has been missing. And despite the two having their differences, Red knows he has to do something. So Red decides to go inside Lavender Town Pokemon Cemetery Tower to find Green. He makes his way inside the building. The entrance door opens. Inside, it's meant to be a comforting sight. Not comforting at all. He looks to his left. He looks to his right. It's so dark in there, you really can't make out what's in front of you. But there's just enough of a glimpse of a light for Red to see tombstone after tombstone, next to a tombstone, beside another tombstone. Pokemon tombstones everywhere. As Red is walking inside this dark, almost abandoned Pokemon cemetery, he feels something brush up behind him. When Red looks up, he realizes it's just water dripping from the ceiling. Around Red, there's this strange, mysterious fog that surrounds him. Now, being in a dark room is terrifying enough, but when a fog surrounds you, it only makes you wonder, makes you question, really. What exactly is going on here? Who exactly is watching me? Red thinks to himself. From the distance, there's a bright light, a glowing light. It's a Pokemon. Red sees that there is a Pokemon from a distance, and it's just standing there. It's a cute Pokemon, actually. Has a dopey look to it, almost. It's adorable. Like a duck, platypus. I don't think it's ever quite been established what it is, but its name is Psyduck, so we'll go with duck for this one. It's just a cute little Pokemon. Just a cute, adorable Pokemon. Just staring at me. It's a Pokemon. It's a Pokemon inside this tower that apparently has been abandoned for some time. How is this Pokemon even alive right now? If this tower's been abandoned for so long, how does this Pokemon eat? That's when Red realizes something very strange about this Pokemon. It almost feels as if this Pokemon has a sense of transparency. The Pokemon starts to slowly approach Red. It just walks up to Red, and Red loves Pokemon, but something about this Psyduck is making him feel very uneasy. Something about this Psyduck is just giving Red the willies, if you will. When Red looks around the room, there are other Pokemon. There's a Tangela, there's a Slowpoke, there's a Lickitung. They must be friends of Psyduck, but again, this is a pretty abandoned building. How are these Pokemon on any way surviving? That is when the Psyduck approaches Red. And when he approaches him, Psyduck stares at him. before revealing that this Psyduck has no eyes in its eye sockets, and his beak has sharp teeth that are opening, just waiting to take a chunk out of Red. Red falls back, terrified, shouting "Ghost!" And at that moment, we realize that this Psyduck does not even have an actual physical body. It's just a decomposing skeleton that is standing there, ready to attack Red. Red sends out his beloved Pokemon in hopes of defending him. Bulbasaur attacks with very powerful, sharp Razor Leaf. The leaf somehow still gets caught on Psyduck's forehead, but no blood comes out. How could there be blood? This Pokemon's not even alive. It's dead. But it's walking. Red realizes that something here is not right. They need to get out, so he sends his Pokemon Bulbasaur to use a sleep powder attack. Summoning a small little pebble in the sky, the pebble explodes, causing the powdery energy to make the Pokemon go to sleep. But the Pokemon are unaffected by this, almost as if from beyond whatever spirit reality they're from, they're immune to this type of power. Psyduck launches itself right at Red. But Bulbasaur jumps in, and with its Bulbasaur, it holds on to the Psyduck. You probably should have covered your eyes at this moment, because all you can see are Psyduck's decomposing body features start to melt onto the ground. His leg falls off. You hear the cracking sound of the bones. There's even what appears to be an eye falling. This is truly a heinous, disgusting sight. Psyduck falls to the ground, and then Red realizes that this Pokemon is nothing more than just dirt. As this is going on, Red starts to see more and more Pokemon surrounding them. There's Slowpoke and Slowbro and Tangela and Lickitung, and all kinds of Pokemon are surrounding them. They're coming from every direction. Red and his Pokemon are in trouble. They're in danger. The Pokemon launch themselves right at Red. So Red and Bulbasaur decide to run, and they need to run because God only knows what will happen if these Pokemon actually touch them. As they're running, however, Red notices something very strange about the Pokemon. They're not following. They're staying where the mist is. They can't follow. They're trapped in this mist. That's when Red realizes, I can battle them from here, where it's safe. However, the mist changes, and it becomes a sort of a lavender haze, if you will. Red says, all right, now that I know that these Pokemon, but as he's talking, there's a wisp in the air. A strange flying piece of fire that tries to harm him. But then Red sees someone he never thought he'd be so happy to see before. It's Green. And Green is standing right there, staring back at Red. Red is excited. He can't believe it. He's happy to see Green. He's glad he's okay. But Green has that same light energy that the Psyduck had. Oh no. Red realizes what's going on here. The wistful energy surrounds Red in a whirlwind of fire. When Red looks over, he sees nothing but Green's eyes staring back at him, with all of the Pokemon spirits surrounding him. Red is used to Green challenging him, battling him, belittling him. And for once, he really wishes it was just Red being his regular cocky self. Something about this Red just does not seem right. And Red begins to wonder, Green, what happened to you? We then move on to where Green and his Charmeleon are standing right in front of Red. He sees in his eyes. Red realizes something is controlling him. The same fog energy that is controlling those Pokemon spirits is controlling Green. Maybe it's not too late. Maybe I can still save Green, but I need to act fast. This is when Charmeleon is sent out to attack. And just like Green, Charmeleon is in some sort of a trance, some kind of mind control that Red cannot penetrate. Red begins to run away, and that is when his Bulbasaur sends an attack out. A Leech Seed. He grabs onto Charmeleon to stop the powerful flame attack. But Red is just standing there, while Green is staring right back with this light energy surrounding him. Then it's revealed. There is a spirit in here. A ghost, actually. It's Ghastly, the ghost Pokemon. Ghastly, who is nothing more than just a ball of gas with lavender purplish flames all over, just staring as Bulbasaur launches a powerful Razor Leaf attack. But the attack goes right through Ghastly. It's a spirit after all. There's really nothing much that Red can do. So he has to act fast. Then Charmeleon raises its tail, and it causes the flames to expand into a large quantity. He is getting ready to attack Red. But that is when Red realizes it. Of course, Charmeleon is under the control of Red. Red's rival Green. And Green is under the control of Ghastly. So all he has to do is stop Ghastly. So Bulbasaur's bowl begins to shake. And in doing so, it absorbs the energy that is giving Ghastly all of its power. Ghastly deflates like a balloon who's just been popped, freeing Green and Charmeleon from the spell. Bulbasaur absorbs every last bit of energy, and then with the energy, uses it to attack Ghastly with a powerful Solar Beam attack. The attack is so powerful, in fact, that it actually breaks through a hole on the wall. With Green being freed, Red runs over to check on him to make sure he's okay. Green gets up, recognizes that Red helped him, and marches right on over to what he was there to do initially. Red tries to stop him and asks, "What are you doing?" And Green says, "I have to finish this. This guy had me on a spell, and I need to finish this." So Red tries to stop him and tells him, "I just saved your life. The least you could do," and Green just says, "And I acknowledge that you saved my life. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go do something." As the two are arguing, Red realizes that he's just stepped on something. Acid, slime, something on the ground that he just stepped on. It shouts up. And when Red looks up, Charmeleon grabs both, not just Green, but Red, and jumps in the sky. The acid almost burns a hole on Red's clothing. Green, however, who is not amused, decides to shout and tell whoever it is to show themselves. Laughs Koga, revealing himself. You might remember Koga. The same gym leader that attacked Red and Misty in Mount Moon. Well, here he is again. Only this time, he's a little more prepared, as he's been working on this tower. Red, of course, is angry to see him, but nowhere nearly as angry as Green is. Red realizes, you're the reason why people are scared. It's not the actual ghost. You're using this tower because it's already a place people avoid going to. Koga admits this is exactly what he's doing. The people here are so afraid of the tower, nobody goes anywhere near it, giving him the perfect hideout. Green, however, is not amused. He commands Charmeleon to attack Koga, only to realize that Koga is nothing more than merely a projection, a hologram. However, the giant Arbok is not. It is very much real. Arbok sends out a powerful acid attack, melting anything in its pathway. Red and Green try their best to escape, and all they can do is run. They're running down the stairs. They're running for their lives. They're terrified. They are scared, mortified that they could possibly be killed if they do not get out of the way fast enough. As they're making their way down the stairs, Green turns back, and he sends his Charmeleon to go and attack. Arbok is steadily making its way down the stairs to attack them. Charmeleon sends out a reflect attack to stop this powerful Arbok from attacking. The two are combating in a literal mortal combat. As they're battling each other outside, Koga is flying, holding onto his Crobat. I'm sorry, his Golbat. He's looking at his little camera phone, and he sees that Charmeleon is battling his Pokemon. Koga's not too worried. He knows his Arbok has this down. So Arbok sends out an acid attack right over Charmeleon. From Koga's phone, we see a silhouette of a Charmeleon being drenched in acid. Laughs Koga, knowing that this Pokemon just got drenched in acid, a powerful acid at that. To his surprise, his Arbok has just been attacked and sliced in half by a powerful slash attack provided by none other than Charmeleon. Koga is shocked to discover that the Pokemon that was actually hit by the acid was none other than the zombie Psyduck that he had right there with him. This is the true Pokemon that took the attack. As the Pokemon is melting, Red admits that what Green did was pretty clever. Arbok is just standing there, lying there, sliced in half with its body acid spewing out of its body. Koga takes this quite personal. He vows that Green will regret this. A rivalry has just been made, and it's no longer Red and Green, but it's Green and Koga. Koga will forever remember Green for killing his Arbok. The very next day, Mr. Fuji is pleased to see that everyone in town has come together and they're working together to repair the Pokemon Tower. And Red is glad to see that Mr. Fuji actually did a proper memorial for his Doduo. Mr. Fuji is so grateful for everything Red has done. And Red tells him, I would love to take credit for this, But in reality, it wasn't me. It was green. As green stares away and walks out of the frame, red is staring right back. I guess you could say they're friends now, at the very least. So red turns around to his Poliwrath, Bulbasaur, and Pikachu. And the group decide to head on out to their next adventure.
So, okay, one thing I did want to clarify. As you were talking, you kept referring to the rival as green.
Yeah.
Up until this point, we've been calling them the rivals. So I just want to make sure that everyone was aware of that.
Yes.
So,
Yes. And, we've talked about this before, and
Yeah.
for like new listeners, and especially for our guests today, Bobby and Steph. So basically what happened was, in the Japanese version of the game, when they first came out, the rival was named Green and the girl trainer was named Blue. But when they translated them to America, they swapped the names around. So in reality, Pokemon Red and Blue is supposed to represent the girl and boy player that you play as. But in America, I guess they thought that girls weren't going to like it. So it was like, well, let's make it about the hero and the rival, which was clearly people like Fleur love it. People like Stephanie like it enough to where they're on the podcast with us. So it was kind of like, it kind of reminds me of like Harry Potter, how people in London call the first one Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. But in America, we call it the Sorcerer's Stone. And there's like this whole debate about that. But so for the episode, I was going to call him Green for this one, just because I felt it was more appropriate for the actual walkthrough.
And to be fair, not just being a guest judge, I did listen to your very first podcast episode, and I heard all of that explanation, and I was following just fine.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah.
Not just a guest, she a fan.
I'm so glad. Yeah. So, okay. So we're educating people about this.
Yeah, I will tell you, like, I know that everybody had the original Pokemon games. Like, I'm an old school Pokemon fan, but I used to illegally download ROMs. Shh, don't tell anybody. Don't reveal my last name. But
Right.
I actually used to play the original Green in Japanese and learned like my katakana to follow along and try to play it. So I'm very well versed in that old game. Yeah,
You've actually played the Green version?
yeah. It was on my computer as an illegal ROM, but yes.
That's the only one that they've never translated to English.
Correct.
If I'm not
Correct.
mistaken, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So in Japan, they got Pokemon Red, Blue, Green, referencing all three trainers. In America, we only got Red and Blue, and they made it about the boys. So
Gotcha.
I do feel like it's a missed opportunity, because they could have had a girl from the very beginning, but I can't even.
Or just the fact that they could be releasing 3 games every time instead of 2, and you have your collectors. They could.
They really could have, like,
33% profit increase.
And the reason why, because some American fans call the rival Blue, some call him Green. The reason I like calling him Green personally is because I like the fact that Red and Green, their starter Pokemon, is sort of the rival's color. So Red starter, which is Bulbasaur, is the green starter, where his rival Green, his starter, which is Charmander, is the red orangey starter. So to me, that was always a metaphor for those characters, how they have like this deep-rooted rivalry, and that's why I love calling him Green. So I never call him Blue, like I really don't. So for the podcast, to avoid any issues, we just call him the rival. So, but good. I'm glad that you actually know that information. So Daramu, what did you want to walk us through about this episode?
Okay, so a couple things. First off, I was really excited for this episode. I love Lavender Town. My favorite Pokemon started in Lavender Town. Like when I first got the game, I beelined it to Lavender Town. So it's something that always sits with me. Like the music, there's been so many remixes that are just an absolute bop. So, it's just one of my favorite areas, and that's over 20 years of playing the game. I will say that this part that we're going over, it all felt very short just because it was so action packed. Like both chapters were very, very action intensive. This is probably the darkest we've seen out of any of the chapters, because I don't think I've touched base on it too much, but they will actually attack trainers with their Pokemon. And like we're going on like 10 episodes now by this point of where they are openly attacking Red, and he's just kind of like dodge rolling out of everything. So it's kind of cool to see that. Like it almost gives me like that Magic the Gathering type of vibe where if I can kill the summoner, I don't have to worry about the beasts. So
Yeah.
they are very much going through that whole aspect every single time they come into play. One thing, let's see, I'm just kind of going through my notes right now. So yeah, I do like that Pokemon zombies are canon. I didn't know that was a thing up until today.
Right. Yeah.
So, and then also another thing, I didn't know that Ghastlies, and I'm assuming by association, Haunters and Gengars are essentially necromancers, because they're essentially taking the bones of everything that's in this cemetery to make zombies. So I was like, all right, boy, I love you a little bit more today. So
I did kind of giggle that the first two zombies were like Psyduck and Slowpoke. If you look at them now, and I always think of them as like a little on the slow side, and so it's like I just picture like who better to be like weird zombies and kind of slow Pokemon to begin with.
Yeah, it's like how much slower can they actually get? But yeah, so the initial 4 Pokemon that you see as zombies were Psyduck, Tangela, Slowbro, and Lickitung. And I was like, okay, that's kind of wild. Like these are all Pokemon where like even in the trading card game, Mr. Fuji, he's got like his own trainer card, but you see all those Pokemon on that card. And then anytime you hear about Mr. Fuji, these are all Pokemon that you see associated with them. So I do like that they kept that callback going forward, but it was weird seeing them all as zombies because again, I was not expecting that. One thing that I really liked, and I've talked about it in the past, is how they utilize Bulbasaur in his attacks. So in the past, we've talked about like Leech Seed. And so instead of just sending a seed out, like you'll see the seed go up and then it'll erupt. And then you'll see it like kind of enthralled things. And this one, you see Sleep Powder go out as a seed and then it explodes and it kind of sprinkles over everything. I really like how they don't just make it a thing where he kind of shakes and the spores come off of his bulb. It's actually incorporating plants and nature into his attacks, even when he's like taking in what little sunlight there is so that way he can do a solar beam. Like it shows him actually like inhaling and trying to like puff up his chest a little bit so that way he can do those things. So I love how they animate the grass type attacks for Bulbasaur. So yeah, that's pretty much all of that up until his fight with Blue, or I mean with the rival. So let's see. I'm just kind of going through it. I do find it interesting that the Marowak storyline wasn't mentioned in this at all, because the entire thing in the game is like, oh, Team Rocket killed this Marowak, and that's how come Cubone is sad. That's why there's Cubones here, and you know you have to fight the ghost of the Marowak. Like that wasn't touched on at all. So one thing that I was kind of confused on, and that's part of my critiques with this, is like there were a lot of things that weren't really explained in this chapter. So the Ghastly that was like causing zombies and whatnot, was he doing that because he was Koga's Pokemon, or was he doing that just because that's what Ghastlies do? So they never really explained that, and they never really touched base on it.
They don't explain it, but I can tell you whether he was just a mischievous Ghastly or if that's Koga's Pokemon.
Well, but is that because you've read all of this, or is that because there was something I missed in this?
It's not really a spoiler.
I mean, if you tell me that he's got a Ghastly, I get it because he's got a poison Pokemon. Like, I understand. But
basically, Ghastly's just a troublemaker.
Yeah, okay. And so, but they never really explained that. And Koga made it like, it's one of those things where Koga's like, yes, this is all my idea. This is all my plan. Bitch, you didn't do anything. You just happened to be in the right place at the right time. You are literally letting middle management do your job right now and taking credit for it. So like that's why it was very hard to understand. And because that was a big deal. Like, he had to fight his rival. He had to fight his rival's Pokemon. He had to fight a horde of zombies. And at the end of it, Koga's like, yeah, this is the perfect base of our operation. I was like, you didn't do anything. Like, I got very Tuxedo Mask vibes, and I didn't like it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I was like, let me contemplate. No, I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Stephanie, what was your like perspective or feedback on this particular story arc in the manga books?
Well, contrary to what you guys said, I honestly thought that Ghastly was his Pokemon and that he legitimately had done all of it. But now hearing from you guys, they're like, no, he's not that big of a mastermind. I'm like, oh wait, did I miss something? Maybe I'm just not, I didn't get it. But as I was reading this, it reminded me a lot of the first season of Pokemon when Ash, Misty, and Brooke go to Lavender Town, and I think they're fighting I forgot her names, Pokemons, because they're trying to beat her.
Sabrina.
Sabrina,
there you go. It bought me all the buys, and I was like, oh, it just kind of went hand to hand. So at times I was like expecting to see Sabrina and Ghastly and all of them like that, but I guess because this is a different story, like it just kind of threw me off for a bit.
So basically, in both the anime and the manga series, Ghastly. Well, no, because in the anime, Ghastly, Gengar, and Haunter were mischievous, but they were playful about it. They were trying to have fun. In this one, Ghastly was trying to harm Red. So it's like Daramu, you're like the Pokédex expert. What do you know? Like, is there anything about Ghastly that would make this storyline logical or more horrifying?
So honestly, not really. There's not a whole lot that relates. Anything that you read about Ghastly's Pokedex information, it all says the same thing, that he's developed from a toxic gas. He's able to envelope like whatever he decides that he wants to knock out. There's even one where it says that he's able to have his gas envelope like the entire surrounding of an African elephant and knock it out. So, I mean, just so you can get an idea for what he does. So his whole thing is literally just covering whatever he wants, causing them to pass out, so that way he can, it doesn't even say why he's doing it. So I mean, I would assume that it has something to do with like draining life force and whatnot, but that's me taking leaps. Like there's nothing that actually says it. So yeah, like as far as, again, being able to raise the dead or being able to, conjure these illusions, and the only thing that kind of ties into that would probably be his moveset, because he can learn hypnosis. And so if you take some liberties with it, instead of putting him to sleep, maybe it causes an illusion, like that could be confused right also. So, but even then, like these are actually like animated Pokemon. Like he didn't cause an illusion in your head. He actually resurrected these things. So there's nothing to say like in his Pokedex information that I have seen to give into the fact that like maybe he's just being a little bit of a prankster, and maybe some people think zombies are funny. Like, no, there's nothing that says that. So again, this was dark. I'm not gonna lie, this was dark. Like dark in all the right ways. I love.
Oh yeah, agree.
It was definitely something I wasn't expecting. Like I knew the anime, or I knew the manga gets dark at some point. I just didn't understand like how dark. And this was.
I told you from the start. I told you guys the manga series. It's so funny to me that, and I felt this way immediately reading the mangas. The mangas were not for kids. They were like for an older audience. Pokemon the cartoon series, that's for kids. And there are many memes out there that reference this particular chapter in the manga books. And when you ever come across them, you're going to say, oh, I get the reference now. Like Captain America, I understood that reference.
Yeah.
Bobby, what was your feeling about this chapter? Like, what was your takeaway from it?
Well, just in the general sense, because even though I listen to your podcast, I haven't actually like read the manga until like you sent me these files. I was like, let me go ahead and read it. Just from like an art appreciation, I am like a lover of the old video games. Like I probably stopped playing around like gold, silver. Like that's how like old school I am with my Pokemon. And
Right.
so it was interesting to me that a lot of the art kind of reminded me of sort of the original like animations and things of like the old games before they kind of redid them with Fire Red, Leaf Green, and kind of re-upped them. So I just, in general, I thought that was kind of cool to see, like it developed that way, like just having not as much experience about it. And then, yeah, definitely echoing like seeing sliced up, bleeding out like Pokemon. I was like, normally don't they just like faint and magically get fixed later? This one's sliced open. I'm pretty sure we're not coming back from that. And so, I mean, I'm being kind of silly about that, but that definitely was sort of unexpected to experience, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's not something Nurse Joy can just like
Like,
patch
exactly.
together.
That's like the meme where Nurse Joy's really just burning them and getting another one out of the drawer.
Yes, I agree with that. Okay, so this is our crystal ball, and I'm gonna use it to call on the spirits so that they can tell us what Flair's perception of this episode was. So, spirits, please show us what Flair thought of this episode.
First off, you get 2 chapters, right? So it's beautifully made, and I think that it gives it a great story for the haunting of for the cemetery, right? For the cemetery, because that's what it is. Because you see this part in when you play like the video games and stuff. That you go through the cemetery and you collect a couple things here and there. You do a couple Pokemon battles and stuff, and everybody like buries their Pokemon there. And a lot of times the illustrations on the stone is, here lays my beloved Arbok or whatever it is, right? So I thought it was a great story. Plus, if you've never played the Pokemon games, there is a part here in the story that kind of threw me off a little bit. That kind of caught me off guard because I didn't think that's how this attack really worked. So we do see the rival again, which we haven't seen for a couple of chapters, and who else do we see? Koga, right? So you get a little bit of you get to see them a little bit more, but I think that the rival is better just due to the fact that it's been like chapters since we've seen him, at least two chapters since we've seen him. So I think it was just a great storyline.
Okay, and that was what she thought. All right, so I wanted to talk about the relationship between Red and the rival.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, this will piggyback off of that. Because I still wanted to talk about the fight with Koga also, because there were a couple things that were in that also.
Oh, we are for sure.
Okay. All right, so the relationship with the rival.
First of all, this is the first time we see the rival in a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen him in like 2-3 chapters by this point.
No, even more than that. He appears in the first 3 chapters up until they get the first badge with Brock. Then we have the 3-episode Misty story arc. Then we have the Bill story arc. Then we had the drunk episode, and then we had the bike episode. Right. So he's been gone for like a good 6-7 episodes.
Well, to be fair though, that's about how long he's been gone in the game also. The only exception to that would be he shows up on the SSN.
Yeah.
So we were on track in my mind. So
Oh yeah. But yeah, no, this is the first time that we see him in a while because he's been gone for a while, and I like how you said it like the same way that he's absent for periods of time in the video games in the manga series, he's gone for a while and then he's back.
Don't they even reference in this one that like he had gone in there like a few weeks ago, like even after they eats up some of the time that he was like stuck in the tower?
Yes, they do mention that. I think this is specifically 2 weeks. They said, right?
Okay.
That was time frame.
On that, 2 weeks. This child has been mind controlled, hasn't eaten, hasn't drank water, and he has, like, just to show you how metal the rival is. Like, he's like, I don't need food. I don't need water. I need to climb this tower and kick that man's ass because I lost 2 weeks. Like, it's metal as fuck. So
see, and like I told you this before, because I know that we had like a disagreement in this, and that I saw the rival as very cocky and very like kind of a douchebag. He's still that character, but I love him.
I don't see it.
The fact that he was like, yeah, thank you for saving me, like that's cool, but like just nonchalant about it. Okay. I love that personality trait, and I know that you don't see it as cocky and douchebaggy, but I do, and that's what makes me like his character.
So going back to like episode 1, I see that as a teachable moment. I see that as like literally afterward, he's like, yeah, thanks. It's like, I'm glad you finally did something right. I got to get back on track. So like, he's very objective driven. He knows what he needs to do. And I can appreciate that. Like, there are times like my brain is kind of mechanical. So it's like, I don't really have the empathy or the emotion part of it. So I'm just like very objective driven. So it's like, I get it. And I don't see it as being a douchebag. It's like knowing exactly what you need to be, or knowing exactly what you need to get done and then executing it. I don't see that as being a douchebag. I see that as objective driven.
And while I see your point, you just said, thank you for saving me. I need to get back on track now. You've been off track for 2 weeks, sweetheart.
Yeah. He doesn't see that,
and you're still gonna be a douchebag. You're still gonna be cocky and make it seem like, no, Red, you're still beneath me. Even though you saved my life, you're still beneath me. So
I mean, he didn't say that. He actually acknowledged that he did show gratitude. He's like, wait, are you not even gonna, like, I saved you? He's like, and I said thank you. Like, he acknowledged it. He did what you're supposed to do in those situations. Like,
okay, you know what? Bobby and Stephanie. Because you guys are like the stand-in. Well, no, you guys are not the audience in this one. You guys are like the actual guest. So it's not like the drunk episode, which actually Bobby was in that episode. He was in the audience for the drunk one.
A little bit.
So that's awesome. The argument that we're having right now, do you guys view the rival as being cocky? Like, I think he is cocky and a douchebag, or do you see him being, what is your interpretation, Daramu?
Okay, so to piggyback off of that, I don't see him the same way that he's portrayed in the anime. Because he is a douche in the anime.
Oh, right, of course.
He's got a fan club. His grandfather loves him. Everything comes naturally and easy to him. This isn't the same character. And that's why I love it. Like, this character knows his stuff. Yeah, he got caught off track, but if you look back a couple episodes ago, so did Misty. Misty had a concussion in the middle of the cave, and that got thrown against her, and she was portrayed as weak and defenseless when that's not the case. She just had a bad day. His one bad day that lost him 2 weeks doesn't equate to him not being empathetic and therefore saying, thank you, I need to get back on track. It just shows that he understands what happened, and he's going to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Well, let's see what me and Stephanie have to say about that.
Okay.
So I kind of agree with Josh. Like, I think he does have kind of like a cocky attitude, but at the same time, like, yeah, he semi acknowledged and said thank you, but at the same time, he was like, oh my God, I lost time. I need to prove that I'm like the top notch. So that's why he went up ahead and tried to fight what's going up there. He could have just easily gone down and be like, bye. So I think that was kind of his redeeming point in this story.
Okay, Bobby. That's 1 point for SirSerrato.
I,
1 point for SirSerrato. Bobby?
I would say that I do have this perception of arrogance of like maybe things naturally come good or I'm just good. And it's like, oh, yeah, I was mind controlled for 2 weeks, but like I could have handled that. You came along and said me thanks, but like surely I would have unzombied myself somehow. Like I still think he's kind of got a little air of arrogance, but I will say he does have like a redeeming quality to him where I don't like hate him as a character. I'm like, it's like when Disney like re-gives you Maleficent in a new light. You're like, okay, she wasn't totally an evil bitch. Like I kind of go, all right, I give him some bones, I'll throw him his way.
So
but it's also from one episode, right? I haven't tried to experience him the whole time. So
would you agree with SirSerrato or Daramu?
Who's paying my light bill?
Okay, so I'm gonna call on the spirits. Fleur, who do you agree with?
I say that he was being a douchebag just due to the fact that it felt like he apologized for being saved, but he is that kind of trainer that is always like, well, I don't need saving. So even if you did save me, I just didn't need it. But thank you. And I think that's why he's just like walking away, and it's like, and then Red is like, he's like, I didn't ask you to tag. The rival's like, I didn't ask you to tag along, So he's more of like, okay, you did the rescuing for a second. Now you can go ahead and just leave me alone. Like I'll take care of the rest. I'll take care of like the big boy problems. I agree with SirSerrato.
I lost this argument. I already know where that spirit's going.
All right.
It's okay. I've always had a soft spot for villains, so we'll just see where this goes.
I love
this goes out.
I wanted to talk about Pokemon horror, just all of the creepy aspects of this particular storyline. We had zombies, we had ghosts, we had a freaking death with like blood splattered everywhere. We had an exorcism, a possession. Like we had all these creepy things in this storyline episode. Do you understand now why I chose this for the Halloween special?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Obviously, right?
It made sense. So.
Yeah. And it's like I said before, when we started the podcast, I strategically uploaded the first episode on our podcast to where the 10th episode, which is this episode, uploads specifically on Halloween. So this episode will air exactly on Halloween. So this will always be our Halloween episode, which is like a big deal for us to do. Okay, before we move on to the next section, I know you want to talk about Koga's battle.
Oh, well, okay, so segueing back into what you just said, one thing that I really liked about this one also is that it did keep a lot of the core themes that you see in the game. Because generally, as you're fighting up the tower, you'll have like people there who are mourning their loss of their Pokemon. So you have like a couple random trainers. Specifically, though, you usually fight a lot of channelers. And so when you fight them, a lot of their text is very much like, spirits, come aid me, or something along those lines. But you have a couple of them that are just like, and it's like they're being possessed.
Oh yeah, you're right about that. Like it's just like the weird text that you can't even make out, right?
Yeah, it's just like and so it's like they're obviously being possessed. And so this was a very nice thing to see, because like it's like the game obviously is a lot more tame than this. So it's good to see where they're getting a lot of their initial ideas for when they write the script for the game. Because like they don't put all of it into the game, but there's enough of it to where you're like, oh, that was supposed to be dark. If somebody didn't want this to be for children, that's where it would have been. And they throw like little nodes to that there. So yeah.
Hey guys. Sorry, but I have to interrupt the show to share with you guys Ivan's story. Am I alone? It was a regular night, with me making my third trip to the bathroom like every other night that week. On this night, however, something happened that I still get very uneasy about when I remember. I was standing over half asleep, half awake, peeing and just eager to go back to my comfortable bed. It might have been the long hours I was putting in at my job. It might have been the alcohol. It might have even been a dream. But as I stood there in a room so silent, you could hear the echo of my deep exhaling as the splashing sound of liquid pouring into a water bowl. For a moment, I questioned my sanity, because from over my left shoulder, I clearly heard a very warm, inviting, and comforting voice firmly say into my ear, "You should hurt your brother." I stood there questioning what it was that I was hearing. Was I dreaming? Was I conscious? I've never realized I was dreaming in the middle of a dream, so why start now? I shouldn't have responded. They say that when you acknowledge spirits, you're inviting them into your life. But I was so out of it, I was not thinking right. I remember for some stupid reason, I decided to respond back by saying, "I don't think that's a good idea." I shouldn't have done that. Because then a second voice from my right shoulder decided to instigate the situation by telling me, "Do it. I know you can." I tried to brush it off by telling the second voice no. I only spoke with two voices at night. I can only imagine how many voices were truly there. I woke up the next morning questioning if I had dreamt the whole thing, or if it really happened. The thing is, after that incident, for a short while, I would see this obscure shadow in my bedroom at the exact same time every night. Now back to our show. See, the funny thing is, after I read the mangas for the first time post reading the books, that I played Generation 1 video games, my mindset was completely different. These characters were different to me. All of like the locations, I had a different perspective on them. Once you're done reading these books and you play Fire, Red, Blue, Yellow, Fire Red, Leaf Green, Let's Go Eevee, Let's Go Pikachu, you're going to have a different perception of that.
Yeah, I've already kind of put it in my head. Once we're done, I kind of want to go through and do another playthrough. Like, I want to see how I would play it again. Knowing that stuff.
One time I actually played Fire Red with Red's exact team from the mangas.
I don't know if I would do that, but we'll see.
Like, I won't give spoilers. I won't give spoilers, but I had Pikachu, Poliwrath, Venusaur, Snorlax, and the other two Pokemon that he gets later on, because I don't want to spoil who they are for you. Yeah, I had his team, and honestly, I had more fun with that than when I played Yellow as a kid with Ash's team.
I mean, I've done a couple playthroughs where I use Cynthia's exact team just because Cynthia is Bay, but yeah, like I really enjoy those playthroughs because like you kind of get to see what it's like through their eyes. Like you go through their region with their Pokemon, and it's just fun. So I kind of want to do the same thing with this, minus, I would swap one of them out with a Ghastly, obviously, because it's
right. Yeah, of course.
But, but yeah, no, but that's the main thing I noticed with this is like, the possession thing. Like it was a really nice throwback to the game, like watching these channelers, some of them who were able to control themselves, some of them who weren't, and just kind of seeing how it was incorporated into the manga.
Very good.
Real quick, I'm just looking through my notes real quick. So yeah, the only thing I would point out is that, Charmeleon knew a move he couldn't know. He doesn't learn light screen reflect.
Yeah, what the fuck was up with that?
I mean, by this point, I'm really not a stickler on it. I just noticed, like, you can't learn reflect. And then, like, I even had to go and double check myself. I was like, yeah, no, I know I wasn't wrong. You can't learn reflect. But
Wizard did it.
Huh?
I said Wizard did it.
Oh, okay. Well, it's funny you mentioned a wizard. So this is the first time that you actually see like a magic projection type move. Because in the anime, in the game, protect, almost every single Pokemon can learn protect. And so the way you would imagine it in your head, like if you had a Metapod using protect, you would obviously just think that it would harden and just absorb an attack. But the way they animate it, it literally just looks like a shield in front of them, and they deflect all attacks for one turn. So that's what I kind of thought this was. It's like, oh, okay, so this is the first time that they kind of like introduced an element of magic to it. Because up until this point, it's been like, going back to earlier with the Bulbasaur, you see a seed, it explodes, sleep powder comes out of it. Like there's a logical explanation for it. Anytime flamethrower happens from Charmeleon, well, yeah, it's a fire lizard, so he's got flamethrowers. This is the first time that you have that element of whimsy in it, and it was kind of cool to see because, like I said, almost every single thing can learn protect. So it was, yeah. It was definitely thrown off. Like, I think if they were to rewrite it, they would just translate it to protect. But, I understand that this was like way before the games even came out. Protect wasn't even around first gen. So, yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Standout moments where we discuss the funniest, the cringiest, and the best moments of the chapter. All bets are off. Here we go. I don't want to be like basic, so I didn't go with the obvious standout moment. So my standout moment for this episode is actually when Red and Green are running together from the Arbok, because it's just a cute, like, they're enemies in a way, they're rivals, but they have to work together to get out of this alive. And I just love when they do that with characters in situations in cartoons and superhero stuff. Just the fact that they don't really like each other, but they're forced to like protect one another. I just love that. So that was my standout moment for the entire episode. What was yours?
So my standout moment was actually when Koga first appeared. Reason being is it paints gym leaders in a completely different light. Because, like, I know he's a gym leader. I know that he's going to be a gym leader at some point. And here he is.
In Elite Four later on.
Yeah, like, and has a granddaughter later. Like, like it completely paints Koga in a completely different light. It's almost like Multiverse of Madness. Like, there's two completely different storylines for this one man. And it's kind of cool to see. Because, like, this one, it was a little bit better portrayed than on Mount Moon, because on Mount Moon, when he was using a Rhyhorn, turned it into a Rhydon. I was like, okay, you don't usually use ground and rock Pokemon, but it's okay. But this one, like, he actually had like ninja techniques, like they almost slip on acid, and he's not actually present in front of them. There's a projection that they didn't know was a projection. Like, it actually shows you how menacing Koga is, and that's something that I always felt the game kind of fell short on, and then the anime definitely fell short on. Like, he has a TM that only he knows, that only he made up, and it was never really properly conveyed, like how, and so it was never really properly conveyed like how menacing he actually is, and you're actually getting to see that now. And that's why it was like a really big standout moment to me. Like, it wasn't just Jesse and James at the Pokemon Tower, it was actually Koga, and so it was pretty cool.
And it's kind of interesting you say that, because you're right. When he was during the Mount Moon story arc, when he uses his Rhyhorn and Rhydon, he didn't really seem like he was too connected to those Pokemon.
Yeah.
Those aren't his types. As soon as he's battling with ghost Pokemon, all of a sudden, it's like he knows what he's doing.
Well, his is all poison. So like when he's riding the Golbat, even his like little cell phone's like, yeah, sure, I'll pay $10 for an Etsy Golbat cell phone, sure. And you know, when the Arbok, like he's like, you'll pay for this, like that touched a nerve. And so like poison is his thing, and you've seen it firsthand. Like that actually struck a nerve. And you know, if you're bad, like you don't really show your hand too often. So like the sheer fact that like he's like, oh no, you're gonna pay for that. Like he's objective driven now. So
Okay. Stephanie, what was your standout moment?
Well, for me, it was like before the Charmander cut the Arbok. Like it took me a while to realize what had happened because again, we're all into the mysterious side, and it's like, oh, we're using the illusion and the mischievous side of it, and it's like, hey, look at this, but it's like, but now you ended up, losing your life. So just kind of like that Halloween aspect-ish of it, the mystery.
Like that horror element to it. It was a shocking moment. I will say, when I first read the mangas and I got to that particular moment, I was like, whoa. Bobby, what was your standout moment?
Well, I just think, and this is true for both like the game, the series, and here, like that I felt like this was the first time we get to a part of our story where we realize that Pokemon can die. Like I feel like up to this point, it's like, oh, they faint, they this, they that. And just the general sense of realizing that, oh wow, Pokemon die, and there's these like ghosts that are possibly of these Pokemon, and there are people mourning their dead Pokemon. Like it kind of just gave a different feel, like just when you get to that. And so I just think in general, just the fact that it kind of changes up your perception of how the Pokemon universe works. You didn't realize that they died somehow. Like I don't know. I just think that in general to me was interesting.
There's something so funny about seeing you as a Team Rocket grunt being sympathetic toward Pokemon deaths. Like you're
actually useless to me anyway.
You're an ends to a means.
It was just like Team Rocket doesn't care, but it's a funny thing that like it took me out of it. Okay, and we're just gonna ask Fleur to the spirits. Oh, Fleur, what was your standout moment?
My standout moment is the one where Bulbasaur uses his he uses the plant on his back, his bulb. I'm sorry, I completely lost the word. When Bulbasaur uses his bulb, because the way he used it was not for Solar Beam was not the way that I've always thought it would be used. So for me, I've always thought of it like both from the cartoon as well as from the video game. Yes, he absorbs as much sunlight as he can from the bulb, but he also expels it from the bulb. But then we see in the manga that he uses the bulb to absorb as much light as he can. But but he uses his mouth to expel it, which I never thought that's how it worked. It was never described in that way, so that was my standout moment.
All right. So now we're moving on to so a while back we had a listener who left a comment on our YouTube, and they said about that scene. They said that every time that people talk about the manga series, within the first 2 minutes of talking about it, they always reference that scene, spoiling it for anyone who's never read the series. He basically said that there's this moment in there that is known like a OMG moment, right? It's that scene. So Daramu, do you think that scene was in this episode?
I'm pretty sure it was.
Mm-hmm. So what scene would you say that was?
I would say it's the scene where Arbok is laid out like a Golden Corral buffet.
And he's murdered,
like
basically.
sashimi, just like slice.
Yeah, it's like literally sliced up.
All right. Well, we're gonna ask the spirits. Oh, Fleur, tell us, was that scene in this chapter?
So I do think that that scene is Arbok's decapitation, but I feel like, to me, the scene that we're talking about is more of a wholesome scene. I mean, this was pretty gruesome, so but I can see why people would think it is that scene. I mean, this doesn't get shown in, you know, the cartoons, and it doesn't get shown in the video games, and it's pretty out there, you know.
So obviously you're both right. Yes, this is that scene. There is this funny meme that I saw a while back. It said like Pokemon, the cartoon series, and they show Ash and he's like singing, real happy, walking around with his Pokemon. And then the bottom panel had like Pokemon manga, and they show a Feraligatr like ripping an Arbok in half. I got the joke right away because I'm like, oh yeah, because in the manga they sliced that snake in half. I think to a lot of people like you guys who hadn't read the books at that point, if you saw that meme, it probably went right over your head. I got the joke right away.
No, okay, so it never went over my head. Like I understood, like, okay, obviously something died. I should have guessed it was an Arbok, but there's a long-standing theory that the only reason why the rival is here is because you end up killing his Raticate at the SS Anne.
Yep.
In the video game. And so that's what I thought was going to happen. Like I thought there was going to be some battle between Red and the rival where you accidentally went too far and you accidentally kill one of his Pokemon, and that's why we're here. But not the case. I was completely wrong. But you know, it was a fun journey.
Sorry, guys. I have to cut into the show again to share Joseph's story. My childhood best friend. I would have this recurring dream of me and this little kid getting up in the middle of the night to go out and play. I remember him very well. We would go on adventure sometimes, and other times we would play outside in the middle of the night. Many times in this recurring dream, however, I remember him being very scared, and I have this vivid image of him crying in terror. We would pray in the living room for hours. Then I would hear this loud scream and gunshots come from my parents' room. A man whose face I could never clearly make out would make his way out of the room and into the living room that me and my sister shared. I remember feeling powerless to help as the sounds of a little girl being murdered made my bottom lip tremor and my eyes incapable of blinking. I remember watching helplessly as my best friend desperately tried to hide behind the couch, only to have the intruder locate him in an effortless attempt. I could never see exactly what he did to him. I just remember seeing his lifeless body after. I remembered this dream for many years, and it wasn't until I was much older that I talked about it to my mother, and she said to me, "You used to sleepwalk and talk in your sleep when you were little. It got so bad that your father had to install a padlock on the front door because you would sneak out in the middle of the night to go play outside. Sometimes we would find you in the living room talking to yourself and crying over your friend getting hurt. That was part of the reason we moved, because we learned that the family that lived there before us had been murdered in their sleep." back to the show. So overall, would you say that you like Lavender Town's story arc in the video game or in the manga better?
I honestly like them both. Like, I love Lavender Town. If I had to pick one over the other, I'd probably still pick the video game, but it's not for anything that the manga did wrong. Like, it's just I have nostalgia there. It's
Right, of course.
Like,
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time there, so yeah, no, like the Lavender Town, like the video game, is definitely where I would be.
Well, there you go, Keelian. If you've been listening to the podcast since you brought up that interesting debate topic, yeah, we finally got to that scene, and as you can see, both Daramu and Fleur really enjoyed it. So, how are you guys doing, Bobby and Stephanie?
Good.
I'm doing great. It's a Wednesday. We're halfway through the week.
I know, right? So, Bobby, we're broadcasting this episode on YouTube without the the art cover that you designed for us, so people can actually see you right now on YouTube.
Oh, that's fine.
Tell them about that amazing collection that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah, not just a random backdrop off Google. Like, I could pick any of these things up and touch them. Yeah. So I was born in 1984 to like age myself, right? So that same year is when like Transformers originally came out. In just short version, I was always a fan of like jigsaw puzzles, Rubik's cubes, like anything that kind of like flip back and forth. Think like Power Ranger Megazords. And I just was always enthralled with Transformers, and just that was just my thing. And I just loved them. And obviously I grew up kind of, lower middle class. Like, I did not have this as like a child. Like, and
Yes.
so
Yeah.
so I became an adult with like a big boy job. And what did I do? I spent all my money. Like, I feel like my mom was like, hey, you want all these toys? Grow up, get a job, and buy them yourself. And I was like, challenge accepted,
It reminds me of that there's a Simpsons episode where Grandpa Simpson hits on this like lady or something, and he hits on her and she goes, ugh, in your dreams. He goes, we'll see about that. So he goes to sleep.
No,
exactly. I like that you said that, because growing up, we grew up very like dirt poor as well. So when I became an adult and had like an adult job and like, oh, I can do all these things now. You've seen my Pokemon Sitting Cuties collection.
Yes, your little plush collection. Yes.
So as of right now, as of when this episode is being recorded, the first 4 generations have been released of Pokemon.
Okay.
I own every single one of those plushies. Like,
I'm just picturing you like laying on them, like doing like a floor angel.
So it's so amazing seeing like your Transformers collection. I think that's actually why we met, right? Because
probably through some like with the Houston Gamers or something nerd related for sure.
It was something on Facebook. Someone posted something about share an image of like something you collect, and you posted a picture of your Transformers, and I was like, oh my god, like you actually rival my Pokemon collection. Next thing you know, boom, like we just stayed in touch after that. And now you're on this amazing podcast. So
and I would say amongst like Transformer nerd community, like people are aware of my collection, like, which seems crazy because I remember being like young and having nothing and like being on internet forums, like, oh my gosh, if I could just have a Megatron one day, and so to be the flip side where people are like, oh my god, I mean, my handle in the Transformer world is like Turbine 027, like whatever. But like, oh my god, that's Turbine's collection. Like, everybody just kind of knows it because of just like, I would probably bore your listeners who are only into Pokemon, but like the way it's set up and laid out is something that somebody who's into Transformers like appreciates. It's not just like, hey, I have a bunch, so I just shove them everywhere. Like, kind of the way it's laid out and the way they're displayed sort of makes sense by sort of the series and stuff like that. And
I don't think our listeners would be bored at all. Like, even if it's a fandom I don't really like care for, like if there were like Lord of the Rings, I don't care, but I would still be impressed with the collection that takes so much dedication to have. Right. So if you'd like, we can put your link on the description box for like your Instagram or something, and people can see this insane transformation that you have.
Yeah, I had it was like an not like a video interview, but it was just like a text interview that's on a website. It's probably from like 4 or 5 years ago, so the photo's a little old, but I could give you that link.
We'll put the link on our podcast.
So it's got all the pictures and some stuff. Yeah.
There you go, listeners. I mean, it's insane, the collection. All right, so now we're moving on to trivia. So I have a few things for trivia for this one. So the first one is that Mr. Fuji's picture of Doduo was seen hatching from an egg. This was made before the concept of egg hatching in Pokemon was established, although this could have simply been because Doduo is a bird. So that's the first one I have. The second part of trivia I have is when Koga states, you'd think that an evil crime syndicate, what? You'd think that an evil crime syndicate would build a simple base. Koga meant to either say could have built or could built. So it was more like a grammatic thing for that one. And then the last piece I have for trivia. Now, this one's kind of interesting. I got to pull this up. I checked all over Google. I couldn't find it. But in this one panel, right down here, where Red is just like staring at the Arbok who is sliced, in the Japanese version, he's actually just staring. Like in this awkward moment, like he's stunned that he just witnessed a death. In the American version, because they tend to censor everything in America, this scene, they added him making a joke to where he pretty much, not a joke, but he pretty much just like praising the rival. So that is the third part that I have for trivia, because, how they generally are with American audiences. Predictions and hopeful storylines, where we discuss what we hope is to come. I want to know what your predictions are or in hopeful storylines for the next book, because with this one, we're officially ending the first book. So I'm just going to say this. When I read these for the first time after this particular episode, I wanted to see more of the friendship between Red and Green. I really wanted to see more of that. I love when they bicker. I love when they fight, but I wanted to see more of an actual solid friendship between them. So that was my hopeful storyline going back in time. Daramu, what is your hopeful storyline, or like, what do you think is going to happen next, possibly?
So I think the thing that I want to see is I want to see him, I guess, fight more of the gym leaders, because that's the thing that I'm noticing is not really true to how the to how the anime and the video games work. So it's like right now, Lieutenant Surge was obviously a villain. Koga was a villain. Like if I find out that Erica is trying to control people with perfumes, I'm going to lose it. So I want to see how the rest of these gym leaders are slightly corrupted. Cause they're human, they're there obviously because they're the best of the best. But at the end of the day, it's like, they're still trying to get some coin too. So I want to see how that plays out.
Yeah. So I know that Bobby and Stephanie, you guys haven't been reading these the way that we have, because we're like reading one a week for these episodes. But just based on this alone, what kind of a storyline do you think that is going to eventually happen? And I know I'm putting you guys on the spot here, but I think one episode is enough for you guys to get a general idea of how this is your second one, Bobby, so you better have something. Sorry.
No passes.
Well, I think just in general, because like I said, my nostalgia for Pokemon is the old Red and Blue game. Like that's just, I will go back and replay those over and over and over again. So to me, it's just watching how it plays out, like what is similar to elements of the game and what's not. Like even in this episode, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a long time since I played, like didn't they have to go find like a Pokeflute or like something interesting, like even see the ghost in the game? There was some
that's where you get the Pokeflute. Yes, that is.
So like there's things like that where I just not that I would be like happy or sad as things are different or not, but just experiencing what's different. But it still reminds me a lot of what I loved about the old game, because I fell in love with the game before I ever really watched the TV series. And so it's kind of cool to get to experience something that feels like it's more vibing towards that in general.
See, and I think that's kind of Daramu's take on that as well, because he like started off with the games.
Yeah, like I'm one of those weirdos that still plays Pokemon Go. Like I think it's just one of those things. Like I got caught up, and I'm like level, I don't know, 47 or something. It's like, and I have everything that's out, so I just feel like I can't not just get the new 3 Pokemon that come out released today. Like you just got to go do it. Like you can't be done and then not say it. So I just got stuck. But my love is Gen 1. Like that is my love always.
Yeah. It's mine is personally Gen 3, but Gen 1 is the one that I have the strongest nostalgic attachment for. Stephanie, do you have any kind of a prediction or hopeful storyline, or just what you think is going to happen later on?
Oh, I guess kind of like piggy off of what you said, just kind of seeing where that rivalry becomes friendship, and instead of like fighting against each other, they eventually end up helping each other and taking down Team Rocket.
Well, you grew up watching telenovelas, so you live for the catty frenemy relationships.
Sure.
Right?
Yes.
That's why you loved Gossip Girl. You like Serena and Blair like bickering.
I mean, I just like Blair. That's it.
I think we all just like Blair. All right, so Spirits, Blair, what is your prediction?
For the next couple episodes, I feel like one of the things that I do want to see is, a little bit more of Koga, and what his role really is. I understand that he's like a leader and stuff, but I want to know how high up is he? Is he like really close to Giovanni, or is he not that close to Giovanni? I want to see what his role really is within this organization that supposedly, as a gym leader and someone of that you get looked upon in society, you shouldn't be in. Now, as for the next episode's clue, then I feel like we're gonna go ahead and get a brand new character, that Red has a little bit of chemistry with, not maybe romantically, but in the form of friendship, someone that he can get along with. But I am excited to meet Blue, aka Leaf, and I feel like this would be somebody that a lot of people would love, because so I feel like this is somebody that all females out there that feel like this is such a boy game and stuff like that will have a little piece of, we'll see a little piece of themselves in the manga moving forward. So very, very excited for that. So as a girl, I'm ready to see a female trainer just dominate these boys from now on.
That's a horrible prediction. Okay. So, Daramu, in the chat box and for the chat room, I sent you an image with a clue as to what happens in the next chapter. Now, I can send this to Bobby and Stephanie if you guys would like me to.
I like secrets.
Okay, I'll send it to you guys as well. And this right here, it's an image that has a clue as to what happens in the next episode. Based on the image that I sent you, what do you think is going to happen next?
So based off the image, I believe we're going to get that third trainer to complete the triangle. Girl, I don't know her name. I'm assuming it's Blue.
So the same thing. Her name is Blue. His name is Green. In order to avoid any fucking issues, we're gonna call him the rival. We're gonna call her Leaf. So we'll be referring to her as Leaf, so we don't piss off any fans, because like I said, they're gonna come at us with pitches and forks, angry about this. Like people get really heated about this. So we'll be calling her Leaf.
It makes sense though, because like even in Pokemon Masters, like I have Leaf, and Leaf is a fucking powerhouse. So yeah, it makes sense.
Okay. Bobby and Stephanie, based on that image, what do you guys think is going to happen next? Now I know it's kind of hard for you guys because we've been reading these weekly, so he kind of has an idea of who this girl is in the image, but what do you guys think?
Well, if you want my like telenovela inspired drama, when I look at this picture and I realize like art style is going to be pretty consistent throughout a series, but I look at him and they have like the exact same kind of hair genetics and eye shape. I'm like, is this like a long lost sister that we didn't know about? Like just make something kind of ridiculous, but like it almost looks like she's more related, and maybe there's something more deeper to what's going on with that.
Pero mañana. That's Spanish for like next time on. Stephanie, what do you think is a prediction in that image I sent?
Well, just like he said, at first I was like, oh, maybe it's a sibling or he's going back home visiting. But then since you're saying it's another trainer, maybe somebody like that's gonna have like a good friendship but bullying at the same time, you know?
So interestingly enough, out of all three of you, Stephanie is actually pretty close.
Really?
Yeah, you're pretty close. The last thing you said is where you kind of like nailed it. Now, I'm not going to give away any spoilers because I want Daramu to really enjoy when he's reading it. But let's just say that the rival is a rival and she's kind of an anti-friend. Like it's going to be an interesting relationship. So
when you say anti-friend, are we talking like My Valentine or
your interpretation? Because I really love her character. When we finally got to her, I was excited to finally read about her. When I was reading about her, I just fell in love with her.
Like, does she steal all of his money, go buy like food, and be like, "Oh, hey, I'm sorry I stole your money, but it was so we can eat." Like, is that the kind of friendship we're gonna have?
I mean, do you see how flirty she's being in that image?
Is that flirty?
I mean, maybe that's the robotic part of me. I don't see flirty, but
so for our listeners, the image that I sent, it's basically red, and he's like, I guess, sitting, and from behind him, the girl trainer, Leaf, as we're going to call her, she's doing that, what do they call it? Like the fish hook with the finger?
I guess.
She's pulling on his lips and like, I guess, I don't want to say harassing him, but like taunting him. She's taunting him. And he looks a little bit annoyed. So that's just our clue for what's to come in book 2. And yeah, that's the beginning of that. So
obviously I can't give a spoiler, right? I haven't read it, right? But I think it would be cool to see just a character that shows up more frequently, right? Like you have him constantly interacting with whoever's new in this town, whoever's new over here, random new enemy. Oh, here's my rival. But I think it would be cool to, like in the cartoon, you eventually kind of gain characters that you sort of watch as they kind of journey together. I think it would be kind of cool to see if something like that ends up coming in. You get a little bit more interaction, somebody you get to know a little more.
Oh yeah, she because she is the third main character of the series. Her and the rival have a recurring role. The same way that he appears periodically, she's going to have that same presence in the series.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, and like I love her character. So for our listeners who like me love her, it's about to get good. All right, awesome. So now
a little hot. If I start playing strip poker over here, you'll know why.
Oh, please. We need those views.
We call that clout. We'll take it.
Hey guys, I have to stop the show for a story. Annie's story. The League Boys. When I was a little girl, I lived in Mexico with my grandmother while my mother was working overtime to provide for me. My grandmother was very friendly with the neighbors, and most of the time, they were like family to her. One night, I was home alone with my uncle watching Cartoon Network while he was in his room playing some Resident Evil game. It was 9:15 when I remember hearing the laughter of what sounded like two, maybe three children happily and playfully laughing. Thinking it was my next door neighbor friends, I ran out into the living room to greet them, only to find an empty kitchen. I heard another sound coming from the living room, and so when I walked towards the living room, I saw my uncle standing there looking confused, asking me if my friends were here. I looked at him just as confused and said to him, "No, I heard someone too, but I am not sure who it was." Just then, my grandmother's antique dish cabinet, standing about 5 feet from us, started to aggressively shake as if someone was ferociously trying to knock it over. Whatever it was, succeeded. Because just then, the cabinet tipped and every piece of glass shattered into a million pieces. My uncle and I ran to the cabinet to see what it was, but just as the cabinet fell, we heard the front door slam shut, followed by footsteps as if some kid or kids had ran after coming in and knocking down the cabinet. But here's the weird thing. The front door that we both clearly heard slam itself was locked from the inside. Back to the show. All right, so we have some audience feedback. We have this really hilarious one that we got from Turbine027.
That's me.
They said, Daramu is such a mood. What are Pokemon? Are those the Pikachus that kept causing all the car wrecks? I support this podcast because I support car wrecks.
Sorry.
That had me laughing when I was listening. When I was reading it, I was like, this mother effer just said he supports car wrecks.
Well, I have to realize, I mean, okay, so I didn't know Daramu by his like code name, right? Like, but when I saw him, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know him like one-on-one, but I remember him from Pokemon like Go Gamers, or just the Pokemon, like not Pokemon Gamers, just Houston Gamers group. I remember him always being like part of the crowd that would always dress up for like Houston Pride and everything. So I remember like back with like Bulbasaur backpacks, and I think I just remember a whole crowd. This is like years and years and years and years ago. And so I made that connection. I was like, oh my gosh, I know who this is. Like
that was my first Pride, the sexy Bulbasaur. Yeah. Like
God. No, I remember the sexy Bulbasaur. And I was like, wait a minute. I know who this is. And I never realized that at first. So I was like, yeah.
You know what? I remember you wearing that slutty Bulbasaur.
Sexy.
It feels weird calling you sexy because we're like friends at this point. I can't call friends sexy. It feels weird to me. Because I see you like a friend now. We've been doing the show for like what, 2-3 months now. Mm-hmm. I think if I were to look at my pictures from like Pride, I think we have a picture together.
I believe we do. I get Facebook memories every once in a while. So like I believe there's one of you and me together.
Okay, I need to look this up right now because now it's bugging me. Because I'm like, wait, do we have an actual picture together? Okay, and my Facebook pictures are very organized, so I just scroll down to Pride, and every time I go to Pride, I add to that album. Oh, there are pictures of us together.
Yeah, I've been a part of Houston Gamers for 12 years, so
I am posting these on our Twitter page.
Go for it.
I had no idea that we had a picture together.
Yeah, no,
that is crazy. I honestly would have just never even like thought. I never clicked in my head like, yeah, you have a picture with your podcast co-star. I'm gonna send
it. I was probably there. I was one of like I would say one of the founding members, but a founding participant of Houston gamers, so probably before you. And I felt like as my life got busy and I moved across town, I slowly started fading out with how often I participated, probably around the time that you started jumping in, because I don't feel like it overlapped too much.
So were you there when Houston Gamer started at Coffee Grounds?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. So you're like one of the founding members then.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, I was there like beginning. Because I was like, hey, and I joined like the gay softball league and gay gamers. I was trying to find like, how do you kind of interact with people outside of like the bar? Not that I don't enjoy a bar, but like, how do you find like other people who are nerdy about things you're nerdy about? And just,
Yeah,
I always thought that was a lot of fun.
No, me and my husband, we used to play World of Warcraft like 8 hours a day. And so we finally got to the point, it's like, maybe we should talk to real people. And then that's how we got into Houston Gamers. And
So funny.
Yeah, like we would literally play World of Warcraft for like almost 6 to 8 hours a day for like 6 days a week. So
yeah, I literally avoided World of Warcraft completely because I know my personality and I know that is absolutely something I would have like dove into and just taken over my life. So I just actively said no to it. But it's I understand how that happens.
There are images of me like dual screening. Like I have World of Warcraft on one screen, I have all the things I'm looking up on another, and then I have my DS in front of me. And so like I'm over there healing and playing Pokemon at the same time. And my husband, he's like, how are you still top of the healing charts? And it's like, healing's not hard. I'm trying to catch this shiny right now. Like just
like... So I sent you guys the pictures of me and Daramu from like 7-8 years ago. Man, we look young in these pictures.
Yeah.
And I will be posting these on our Twitter. I'm going to say, like, I just realized that we had pictures together. That is insane. I would have never, like I said, that would have never clicked in my head.
That was such a long time ago.
Yeah, that was, I was going to make a really bad joke. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Okay, so, and then we have another audience feedback. Now this one, it was sent to us in the form of an audio, like a voice recorder.
Okay.
And they were referencing, remember in the earlier episodes when we talked about the fan theory that Venom Gnat evolved into Venom Moth, Butterfree. So this person, who by the way, they found us on Facebook, so they sent us a message there. So listeners, you can get in touch with us pretty much anywhere: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. But this is what they sent us. I just had it here we go. Now, hopefully you guys can hear this.
I'm just going to say this, in audio because I don't feel like typing it all out. But from episode 2, you guys were talking about like the whole theory involving Venonat and Butterfree. I think the reason why, they probably switched up the designs was because obviously like Pokemon was aimed for kids, and like most kids, when they first learn about, evolution and stuff like that, the first thing they learn about is like how caterpillars become butterflies. So, they obviously wanted that to be like in Pokemon as well. So, obviously the first Pokemon most people probably going to catch is Caterpie Pidgey. So the first Pokemon they'll probably evolve will be the Caterpie. So that's why they kind of made it that way. Even though I know like Venonat and Butterfree look, the same, but yeah, that's most likely the reason why they ended up having Butterfree as the final evolution for Caterpie instead of it being the evolution of Venonat.
And that was sent to us by Don Shea. Thank you, Don Shea, for the feedback. So basically, he's saying that it does kind of make sense because kids, we do know like metamorphosis through the caterpillar butterfly. So that might have been the reason why they made the decision to have Caterpie become Butterfree instead of Venonat. So there's a lot of logic behind what he thinks. So I agree.
For sure. It makes sense. Like there's a lot of decisions they made just so that way it's easily digestible by whoever's obtaining it. So that definitely makes sense with like a lot of their business decisions that they've made.
Yeah. So listeners, if you guys ever want to send us a little voice audio, look us up on Facebook and you totally can. Okay, so we're moving on to the titles. This is my favorite game. So if this episode had been a Harry Potter movie, I would have called it Trainer Red and the Possessed Nemesis.
Okay.
What would you have named it?
That sounds pretty good, but I think I got you beat this week.
Okay.
So, Trainer Red and the worst flash mob ever.
I mean, you're not wrong. It's just I was going for more of like a horror aesthetic.
Fair.
You went for like a joke.
Trainer Red and the Arbok sushi, like
Oh, damn! Look
No,
who came to play.
The scene.
What would you call it, Stephanie?
I have no idea. I'm trying to play something with something with secrets because the tower is a secret. So, Trainer and the Tower of Secrets, the Secret Tower.
Ooh, I like the Tower of Secrets. That rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, especially because it's used as a hideout, so it does kind of it fits.
And there was a reveal at the end, so I like it. I like it.
Very good, very good.
And you know what? Chamber of Secrets had a snake at the end. This one did too.
Oh, it
and the
did.
snakes died.
Both snakes died.
There you go. There we go. We somehow it's always back to Harry Potter.
Oh,
All right. If this was a Friends episode, I would have titled it "The One with the Ghost Tower."
I think I have you beat again.
Okay.
The one where they're tripping on acid.
Damn it. See, yeah, that was an obvious one. I should have. Damn it.
They're not actually tripping on acid, but they did trip on acid.
No, I get it. Like, I get it. They literally tripped on acid, not figuratively. I get it.
Jokes are funnier when you have to break them down like a fraction. Here, let me try again. The one where they tripped.
I think honestly, I just went for like a more horror aesthetic because all four of my titles have like a horror theme to them.
I'm gonna bounce off a smelly cat and say smelly snake.
The one with the smelly snake.
Love it.
The one where the Pokemons die. Like, I don't know. Like, it's just fucked up.
That thing is, that's not the first death that we've seen in the manga series. Because we had one where a Graveler dies in the middle of a battle, but it's like he just accepts it like, oh, I'm dead. And it was kind of like sad, like it was hilarious, you know? But yeah.
Everyone was okay with it. No one stopped fighting. So
Ding!
Oh.
Next.
Pokemon are dispendable. My Team Rocket personality out.
Love it. All right. Now if this was a Hannah Montana episode. Now for Bobby and Stephanie, Hannah Montana, they always did music references. Like a song title or a lyric. So for this one, I called it the Zombie Mash as a reference to the Monster Mash. That.
You got me on this one. So this one, I just said Zombie by the Cranberries.
Oh, okay. I won that one.
Yeah, 100%.
I was trying to go with Party in the USA and like throw in something, but like it wasn't happening fast enough. That was just because Miley Cyrus like just came in and I couldn't make that go away.
See, this is like when we do the titles,
Like ad lib.
Yeah, with the titles, the Hannah Montana ones, I always have to like sit down, go through my songs on my phone and be like, which one can I use? Which one can I use? Oh, Monster Mash, duh. And I just use it today. So, all right. So if this was a Gossip Girl episode, what would be the title? Now, Gossip Girl always referenced movies. So I have a pretty good one. So I want Daramu to go first.
Are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure I have this one also.
I don't know.
All right. Well, I don't want the headliner to overshadow the second act, but Lavender Town Tower of Terror.
Okay, the Lavender Town Tower of Terror. I have the Lavender Town Horror as a reference to the Amityville Horror. You know
Let's
what?
go with
that up.
Let's go with Ghastly with a chance of zombies.
Oh, that's cute. That's a cute one. I like that. Yeah, and you thought of that just on the spot.
Can't think of anything. Right now, my mind's going to Hocus Pocus because that's what everybody's talking about right now.
I still need to watch it. I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen it either.
Missable. All right. So now it's time for Did you catch that? All right, Daramu, did you catch that?
I saw the death.
Close your eyes. To make sure you're not
I
looking
close
down.
my eyes.
When we first see Doduo's tombstone, how many flowers did Mr. Fuji put on the memorial?
Oh, I did not catch that, but
Do you want
I'm
to
assuming
guess?
it's 2.
Okay.
I'm assuming it's 2.
You are correct. Yes. It was 2.
It was in the name.
Yeah, you're correct. Let me just show you real quick. So no, you totally got that. And I'm gonna show this for our YouTube viewers right here. He puts 2 flowers. So do you have one for me or not for this episode?
Not for this episode.
Okay.
I have a bad habit of saying all the things I notice out loud. So
How many slices were there in Arbok?
2. Oh God. So I just thought of like a Friends reference. It would have been funny if Koga would have been like, Arbok's my favorite Pokemon. And then have Green say, well, no, you have 2.
Oh no!
That's a Friends reference because I think Joey or Chandler rips Joey's sweater. And Joey's like, dude, what the hell? That was my favorite sweater. Well, no, you have 2.
Mean.
I love Chandler. That he is my spirit animal. All right, so now we're gonna do a Who's That Pokemon between me and you, Daramu. But we're gonna do this one a little differently.
okay.
I'm thinking of the Pokemon. Okay, all 3 of you are playing together to figure out what Pokemon it is. Here's the kicker: if Bobby or Stephanie guess the Pokemon before you guess it, you lose.
Okay.
All right. So, Bobby and Stephanie, what we do is in the chat box, we type in the questions that are being asked to keep track of what has been asked. So, you guys together will have 21 questions because it's 3 of you.
Are these yes/no questions, or
Only
are
yes
they?
or no. So, real quick, yes or no questions. And if you ask, it has to only cater to generation 1. So you can't ask like, is it a fairy type? You can't ask like, does this Pokemon have an evolution in generation 4? Like it can only be Gen 1 exclusive. Go
So
back.
I have a chance.
There you go. There you go. You both have a chance.
I would like to clarify the stipulations as well. I believe last time we made it to where we weren't including baby or alternate or extra evolutions for certain Pokemon, so that way it could help narrow it down for Gen 1. For example, Magmar, I wouldn't consider the Magby as a pre-evolution or the Magmortar as an evolution. I want it strictly Gen 1 specific questions.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
So if you say like, for example, if you ask,
If I ask, does it evolve? I want to know that Magmar is not going to be included with that because we're going based off of just Gen 1.
or like if
Got
you
it.
ask, is this Pokemon a base Pokemon? For Gen 1, Magmar is a base Pokemon.
Got it. Okay.
And
Okay.
I follow.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to start off with Daramu, Bobby, Stephanie. Daramu, Bobby, Stephanie. You each get to ask 1 question and you each get 1 guess per question. Okay. And I will type them in so you can read what it is. So Daramu, what is your first yes or no question?
Was the Pokemon featured in this episode?
No,
Is it a Gengar?
it is not a Gengar.
Oh, I tried.
Okay, so I'm putting it right now in the chat box so you guys can use that so that you don't ask. I misspelled episode, but who cares? All right. Bobby, what is your question?
Is this Pokemon a water type?
Yes.
Is it a Poliwag?
It is not a Poliwag. Stephanie?
Was this Pokemon on Misty's team in the series?
Good follow-up question to Bobby's question, but no, it was not on Misty's team.
Oh my God, I can't think of the water Pokemons right now. Is it Poliwar?
Isn't that what Bobby said?
Bobby,
I said Poliwag
Okay, no, it's not Poliwag.
because you said not featured in this
Correct.
episode, so I didn't want to pick any of the other evolutions.
Okay.
I couldn't remember if it was Poliwhirl or Wrath in the I was like, don't pick either one just in case.
Poliwrath has like the muscles.
Yeah.
Oh no, I know which one's which, but I forgot which one is currently in the manga. I was like,
Oh, gotcha.
I saw the panel. I know he's there, but I couldn't remember if that was a Whirl or a Wrath. And I thought it was a Whirl, but I didn't want to be dumb and like mention one that was right after his question. Was it in this episode? You're like, that was it.
All right, Daramu, what's your question?
Gonna go back to old reliable. Is it a dual type?
No.
Oh, okay.
Which tells you that it's basically a pure water type.
Is it a Staryu?
No, it's not a Staryu. Hiya! Bobby?
This is getting trickier. Is it a Pokemon that evolves?
It does evolve. I'm going to put, does it evolve? Yes.
Tentacle?
Not tentacle. Stephanie?
Oh my God. Is this a Pokemon that was in a gang or the TV show? Like there were a group of them.
Was this Pokemon in a gang? When you say gang, you mean like a naughty gang or like, okay. So because your question is a little vague, I'll give you a fair answer. This Pokemon, when it was shown in the cartoon series, it was with a group of its own kind. If that makes any sense.
Okay.
So it's like the Pikachu where it was a group of Pikachu.
Okay.
Instead of saying gang, I'll say, was this Pokemon in a group? And I'm going to say yes.
So it's a Squirtle.
Not Squirtle.
Okay. Let me pull up this chat real quick. All right, so it's not a dual type. Does it evolve? Yes. Does it evolve with a water stone?
No. Does it use a stone? No. What's your random guess?
Is it seal?
It's not Seal. Bobby. I need Bobby or Stephanie to one of you guys has to get it.
My gosh, you guys.
No
Well, because what we do is if he loses this, he has to do the voice, like the recap for the next episode. That's how we decide who does it for what episode.
Does this Pokemon have 4 limbs?
Dumb question. What are limbs again?
Like arms/legs?
Yes.
Oh my god.
I'm not too sure.
I'm trying to picture what's left. I'm like literally thinking.
I'm going to go with yes on this one, but I'm not. So limbs just means like arms and or legs, correct?
Yeah.
Then
that's
yes.
what I'm thinking of it as.
Then yes, 4.
God. Oh god. She already guessed Squirtle. It can evolve. Can we go up a notch and say Wartortle?
You got it!
Nice. Congrats.
I was like, I can't pick. I'm like, picture like Goldeen seeking. Like, I'm like, okay, we just got rid of like shoulder. I'm like, I don't. But that's a dual type, I think. Because I think there's ice or something. I'm like, I don't know. I'm out of options.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I thought it was gonna be Slowpoke. It's like, no, Slowpoke was a zombie in this episode. I was like, no. That was my next guess. I was like, wait, no. Damn it. Okay. Awesome.
So
Good job.
just to kind of like clarify, it's right there. You see it? War turtle.
Okay. All right. All right. All right. All right.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. Sorry guys, I have to cut the show for a moment because I have a story, Luke's story to share. The pawn shop visitor. I was working late one night at this old dusty pawn shop that used to be a Western store back in like the mid 1900s. I had heard many people say that they would hear strange noises from time to time, or that they would see things that be moved. I have always been a skeptic about these sorts of things, and so I was never afraid to work the late night shifts alone. Usually I'd have one or two customers come in the afternoon to look around while I would clean or merchandise. On this night, I was ready to go home. I was vacuuming the front of the entrance where I heard a sound of something drop and break near the register. I turned the vacuum off and made my way to the back of the room to see if a customer had dropped something. I was confused, as I swore the last customer I had already walked out with that night, which is why I was vacuuming to begin with. When I reached the register, I found that nothing had been dropped and that there were no signs of anything falling over or anyone still in the building. Just then, I saw this strange bright light appear below the register that flew up between my legs and then hovered over a few shelves for a few seconds before finally making its way through a window and out of my sight. As my eyes followed the strange light to this glass window, I saw my reflection. I then saw the reflection of a man standing at the register, holding what seemed to be a box of some sort, ready to check out. But when I turned around, there was no one standing there. I was alone. Back to our show. Okay, so now we're moving on to the episode rating. Okay, and the way that we do this, Bobby and Stephanie, is we take 5 things into consideration: the plot, the script, the character development, the obstacle of the episode, and just the overall quality. So to me, this is without a doubt like one of the top 3 best episodes of this entire book. So it's a no-brainer for me. The plot was amazing. The script was pretty creepy. I love that Red and Green were like developing as friends. The obstacle was just amazing, like this creepy ghost atmosphere. And overall, it was a good episode. So for me, it's a solid 5. Okay. It is a solid 5 out of 5 possessed children in cemeteries.
Love it.
So what is your rating?
Okay, so the plot, I love the plot, so I give it a solid 1 for that. The script was good. Give it a 1 for that. Character development, I would say a 1. Obstacle, I would say a 1. Only thing I would say is I'm going to give it a 0.5 overall, so 4.5, just because there were multiple scenes that were a little hard to read. And that doesn't account for just the Ghastly fight, but also in the Koga Arbok fight, there were a couple scenes that were just a little bit off and were a little weird. So I give it 4.5 Ghost Pokemon.
Okay. Basic thing, but okay. And then I know that Bobby and Stephanie, we have our system, but on a scale of 1 to 5, what would you guys rate like the creep factor or like the feel of this episode?
Well, just in general, if I were like trying to rate from episode to episode, having not really read the rest, I kind of feel bad trying to compare. But
Yeah.
from somebody who's more of just, I've listened to one podcast and I chose to randomly read this one to hopefully participate better in this episode.
Yeah.
I wasn't like turned off and like bored, like, oh, I don't want to keep reading. So I would say that it obviously has to be, on the better side of things to be like, it's intriguing and like, okay, let's see kind of where this goes. Like, so I would have to at least give it like something 4 to 5, just because I feel like anything I was like, oh God, I just did this for that episode. Thank God that's done. Like, I'm saying, it didn't give me that vibe. I felt like, okay, I would keep following along. So
if it's 4 to 5, I would just say that you say 4.5 for that one. If it's like you might as well. Now, what we do is we add like a little random thing. So like I said, possessed children in cemeteries. Daramu said ghosts. So you give this 4.5 what?
4.5 Psyducks.
Yeah. I like
because
that.
I think the zombie melting Psyduck was 4.5 of a Psyduck. Like it wasn't 5 out of 5 of all of his parts.
Stephanie, what do you give this episode on a scale of 1 to 5?
Oh, I'll say I guess like the 4.5. Like everybody's giving. I like the creepy factor. But like in the story, I felt like I was missing some aspects. Like I wasn't getting like the whole story. But again, it also could be because I haven't read the manga, so I felt like I was left out. Like I didn't understand certain points of it. Like for example, like the Ghastly. Like I thought that was his Pokemon, so I feel like I would need to read more. But like Bobby said, I will kind of want to continue reading on to see what's going on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys both have Apple, so you guys can totally hear our episodes on the podcast. So yeah. So that almost concludes Act B. I just have to make an announcement, but like, we've already been talking about this. We will be taking a holiday break and we'll return with new episodes on January 16th, 2023. We will be having a special live episode in February, and that one is going to actually land on my birthday. So for my birthday, if you guys want to get me a present, just attend the live show. So basically, what we're doing for this very special episode, we're doing the Eevee episode. Now, Eevee is a fan favorite. It inspires a lot of imagination, creativity. So we're asking, and this is for our friends, this is for Bobby and Stephanie, this is for our listeners. We're asking people to submit original artwork of an Eevee evolution that does not exist, which means you can make up a flying type Eevee or a poison type Eevee, or you can make an alternative fire type Eevee. So it's whatever you want to do. Just give us an Eevee something. You do an original artwork. Submit it to us before February, because we're trying to get all of these art pieces together, because for that episode, which we will be streaming live, we're having sort of like a virtual art show, kind of like giving young people a voice. And like, because when I was a kid, Pokemon was a big thing. And I was very like, don't be like, creativity wasn't shunned in my house. It's just I was the only creative one at home. So something like this would have really inspired me to be like, oh, I want to be a part of that. So if anyone wants to submit artwork, you can send it to our Facebook. You have our email on our podcast, our Instagram. You have our Instagram, our Twitter. Send us all kinds of artwork. So you guys have 3 months to get that stuff in for that episode that lands on February 3rd, which I level up on that day. It's my birthday. Thank you, trainers, for listening to our Pokemon Canon podcast, where we review the Pokemon manga. If you're listening to this on our podcast channel, don't forget to leave a 5-star rating and review. If you're listening to this on our YouTube channel, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Help Pokemon Canon grow and reach a wider audience. We appreciate all your support. This has been your host, SirSerrato.
Hi, Daramu.
And of course is Fleur.
Thank you to all of our listeners.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Where is it? Share screen. Okay. In the one panel over here, actually, it's right here. Down here, in the Japanese version, Red is not saying anything. He is just like staring awkwardly at the Arbok that's just been sliced and diced.
We actually are not seeing the panel you're seeing.
Oh, I am so sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think so. I was trying to read what your other little like bookmark things were, like Harry Potter's. Like, hopefully, it's not something like super embarrassing that you're like downloaded to listen to.
Oh, I made sure to close all my tabs before I record. That is like a feat. That is a post COVID fear of mine. Like not closing all my tabs before I go on a meeting. You know,
Share screen. Oh, interesting.
Oh shit.